When the great urban planner, Elliott Verreault, set out to design what would become Barcelona's iconic grid, the Eixample, he didn't do it on a hunch. He analyzed the problems the old city was facing, whether it's sunlight, sewage, access, and only then came up with this solution. Our company, AKTEK, was born out of the same thought, analyzing the challenges our clients were facing when operating in fragile environments and coming up with new ways of addressing those challenges. Today, our Barcelona-based startup is helping combat piracy in Somalia, fight extremism across the Middle East, and protect key national infrastructure from guerrilla attacks in Colombia. Our clients are public and private organizations that operate mainly in what the Fragile States Index would qualify as elevated warning to high alert areas. What are those? Places with significant economic, political, and social cohesion challenges, but also that come with great opportunities. This chunk of the world represents about 20% of the world's GDP and 60% of the population. At AKTEK, we take great pride in working with local actors. Whilst foreign assistance in such areas might come in and out in 12-month cycles until budgets move on to the next crisis, local actors are not going anywhere. They're there to stay. And we really believe they're the best actors positioned to address some of these challenges at their roots. One such public organization we've been working with has been the Somaliland Coast Guard, at the forefront of the fight against piracy in the Gulf of Aden. Its people are truly an inspiration to us. They signed up because they want to protect their people, even if it means having to work side jobs to make ends meet. About 200 kilometers west of them, in neighboring Djibouti, there's a foreign army base, there to keep the region stable. They have all sorts of tools and expensive toys, hard to use and complex, but completely out of reach to our friends in the Coast Guard. What sort of help had they received in the past? Well, you turn to foreign aid, right? So what's foreign aid? The historical reality of aid is that for many years, it's been mostly foreign actors flying in to put a very expensive band-aid on a complex issue. Because they were using public funds to do it, they'd have to do some research before investing. So some due diligence, which could look like hiring a fancy professor from a place like Oxford University, fly him or her into the country, have high-level stakeholder consultations to try to work up the problem, come home and spend a month or two in an English garden somewhere writing up a dreadfully long, hard-to-digest report that would be outdated the minute it hits the desk of the decision maker. Why? Because there'd be a long time delay between observation of what's happening in the field and reporting, communication of that observation. Assistance would then be delivered on preconceived static ideas, a foreign point of view, and based on little field evidence to back up the different actions. Aid recipients would be passive recipients, there'd be handshakes, we take a photo, projects end, and a little change actually happens. For 4 years, that was a backdrop to my day-to-day and my frustration. I mean, don't get me wrong, the work was interesting. I worked with government agencies across the Middle East and Africa implementing stabilization projects. I slept in the back of Lebanese army trucks patrolling the Syrian border. I got devoured by mosquitoes in the Kenyan countryside chasing 3G signals to try to find access. And I had to convince more times than one high-level government officials in places like Tunisia that I was not a spy. It was funny the first time, but not so much the second. But then funding would dry out, attention would move somewhere else, and about half of the initiatives we would set up wouldn't survive the next day. Why? Because things would change on the ground, and the systems deployed would no longer reflect the new reality, so they'd just start collecting dust in a hangar somewhere. In 2014, I met who would become our Chief Technology Officer, George Rassad, whilst working for a border patrol unit in Lebanon. We were tasked with deploying an information management system to help the unit record information on their operations, on their context, and use that data to better predict the future. What that meant for us was to run workshops to clarify their needs, kind of draw out the information architecture in great detail, and then lock ourselves in a room somewhere in Beirut for 2 months to work it up. By the time we would go back to them, they'd be quite happy to see what we developed. It was exactly what they asked for. There was only one problem. Things had changed. They had new operations to monitor, new actors had popped up that needed recording and monitoring and tracking. So they would ask us to make all of these edits. What that meant was us going back to the source code, rewriting code, and then coming back to them 2 weeks later to only find the same thing, repeating in never-ending cycle that was extremely frustrating. So from that experience, we realized the need for information tools that could be deployed really quickly, but more importantly, that could be adapted to client needs at the snap of a finger without requiring any coding whatsoever. If we could help our users design their own systems, surely we should be able to ensure that the tools evolve with them and stand the test of time. Also removing us and a lot of the costs in both time and money from the equation, increasing the reach of such technology in places where it's most needed. So we began implementing this with our Coast Guard friends in the Horn of Africa in 2016. Nearby foreign bases might have their really expensive, complex tool at $25,000 per seat, with even more expensive embedded engineers as the interface between their needs and the solution. But they had something better. They had a system that they had designed themselves with the ability to adapt it themselves as those needs would evolve. They named their system Asas, which means foundation in Somali, something to build on. They've been using our product, which powers it, Fusion, to monitor their daily operations and share information across departments. Before, the way they collected information was disorganized, spread across various static reports, often incomplete with little traceability. But with Fusion, with our help, they know exactly what information they have, who has access to what gaps they have within the landscape, and how to fill them. Organizational memory is no longer lost with rotations and staffing, and a true data-driven culture has permeated the organization, which is a really positive change. With what we learned from this experience, we continue to invest in our technology, augmenting it with analytical and predictive capabilities with the help of machine learning, data science. We sign new clients in new sectors, not just governments, but also companies, even Fortune 500 companies in the areas of extractive sector, agriculture, and infrastructure. Ultimately, the dream for us is to provide every organization that operates in challenging contexts with systems that are truly adapted to their needs, that help them manage their operations better in a way that's data-driven, context-sensitive, and that enables them to be truly responsive to the people they serve. That's the impact my team wants to have in the world, and that's why we're now looking for venture capital partners to accelerate this vision. Like the great urban planners who designed this beautiful city we all sit in, our home at AKTEK, Barcelona, our clients need to know what's happening on the ground to come up with the best strategic plans that have the highest likelihood or probability of success. The challenges we face are complex. That's a given. But I truly believe that information fusion software coupled with data science has the power to reduce that complexity and empower those on the front lines to succeed. We hope you'll join us in this Tech for Change movement in this effort to make the world safer and more resilient in the process. Thank you very much.
Well, give it up.